The Velthrani colony on Nexus 7 was dying. Ambassador Krell stood at the observation window of the central hub, watching the endless fields of purple grain wither under the harsh twin suns. The crops had been their hope, their future on this distant world. Now they turned brown and crumbled to dust. "We have perhaps 40 standard cycles before total crop failure," said Chief Scientist Yenna, her blue scales rippling with worry. The Velthrani were a reptilian species, cold-blooded and logical, but even they could not hide their fear. "The soil parasites have spread to every quadrant. Nothing we have tried has worked." Krell's 4 eyes blinked slowly. The colony held 3,000 Velthrani, families who had traveled for years to build a new home among the stars. They had chosen this planet for its rich soil and mild seasons. They had not known about the parasites that lived deep underground, waiting for something to eat. "Have we received any response from the Galactic Council?" Krell asked. Yenna shook her head. "They say they have no solution. The parasites are unknown to their databases. They suggest we evacuate, but there are no ships available for 6 months. By then..." She did not need to finish. By then, they would all be dead. The only ship that had responded to their distress call was a small human vessel, passing through the sector on a trade route. Humans were new to the galactic community, having only made first contact 20 years ago. They were considered primitive by most species, their technology basic, their understanding of the universe limited. But they were also known to be curious and kind, traits that many older species had lost long ago. The human ship landed outside the colony walls 3 days later. Krell went to meet them, not expecting much. What could these young creatures possibly offer that the great minds of the galaxy could not? Captain Maria Santos stepped off the landing ramp with a smile on her weathered face. She was older for a human, with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes. Behind her came her crew of 5, and at their feet trotted 4 strange creatures that Krell had never seen before. "Ambassador Krell," Maria extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "We came as fast as we could. I'm sorry we don't have much, but we brought what we thought might help." Krell looked down at the 4-legged animals. They had fur in various colors, wet noses, and tongues that hung from their mouths. Their tails moved back and forth rapidly. "What are these creatures?" Krell asked. "Dogs," Maria said, and there was pride in her voice. "Earth dogs. They've been our companions for 15,000 years. This is Max, Luna, Bear, and Stella." The one called Max, a large animal with golden fur, walked right up to Krell and sniffed his leg. Then it sat down and looked up at him with warm brown eyes. Krell felt something strange in his chest, a warmth he could not explain. "They are pleasing to observe," Krell admitted, "but I do not understand how they can help our situation." Maria's smile grew wider. "Ambassador, dogs have abilities that even we humans don't fully understand. They can smell things we can't, sense things we miss. Max here is trained to detect underground threats. Luna is a search and rescue dog. Bear and Stella are herding dogs, but they're smart as whips. Let us try something." Krell was skeptical, but he was also desperate. He led the humans and their strange animals to the edge of the dying fields. The purple grain that had once stood tall now lay flat against the cracked earth. The smell of rot filled the air. Max immediately lowered his nose to the ground. His body went rigid and he began to walk in a slow circle, sniffing deeply. The other dogs watched him, their ears perked forward. "He's got something," Maria said quietly. Max suddenly stopped and began to dig. His powerful front legs moved fast, sending dirt flying behind him. Within moments, he had created a hole about 2 feet deep. Then he stepped back and barked once, sharp and clear. Chief Scientist Yenna rushed forward with her scanner. She pointed it at the hole and gasped. "There is a concentration of parasites here," she said, her voice shaking. "Thousands of them gathered in a cluster. We never detected this. Our scanners showed them spread evenly through the soil." Dogs don't lie, Maria said. If Max says they're there, they're there. Over the next several hours, Max found 17 more clusters hidden throughout the fields. Each one was a breeding ground for the parasites, a central hub from which they spread outward to consume the crops. The Velthrani scanners had only detected the spread, not the source. If we can destroy these clusters, Yenna said, her scales now bright with excitement, we can stop the infestation. The scattered parasites will die without the breeding grounds to sustain them. But there was a problem. The clusters were deep underground, and the parasites were sensitive to vibration. Any attempt to dig down to them with machinery would cause them to scatter before they could be destroyed. We need to reach them quietly, Krell said, but how? Maria looked at her dogs, then at the Velthrani, then at the dying fields. She had an idea, but it was crazy. It was the kind of idea that only a human would have. Ambassador, do you have any animals on this colony? Anything that digs? Krell thought for a moment. We have the burrowing skitterers, small creatures we brought from our homeworld. They dig tunnels to find food, but they are not intelligent. They cannot be trained. They don't need to be trained, Maria said. They just need to be led. That's what herding dogs do. She called Bear and Stella forward. The two dogs were medium-sized, with thick black and white fur and eyes that seemed to see everything. They had been bred for generations to move animals from one place to another, to guide them with patience and skill. If we can get your skitterers to dig down to the clusters, Maria explained, they can expose the parasites. Then we can destroy them with targeted heat bursts. No vibration, no scattering. Clean and simple. Krell's 4 eyes widened. You believe your dogs can guide our skitterers? I believe dogs can do just about anything if you give them a chance. The Velthrani had no better options. They released the burrowing skitterers from their pens, small furry creatures with long claws and nervous dispositions. The skitterers immediately tried to scatter in all directions, but Bear and Stella went to work. The two dogs moved like water, flowing around the skitterers without touching them, guiding them with their presence alone. A skitterer would try to run left, and Stella would appear there, calm and patient. It would turn right, and Bear would be waiting. Slowly, steadily, the dogs herded the skitterers toward the first cluster location that Max had marked. Krell watched in amazement. The dogs never barked, never bit, never showed any aggression. They simply moved and the skitterers followed. It was like watching a dance, beautiful and precise. How do they know what to do? Krell asked. Maria stood beside him, her arms crossed, a proud smile on her face. They were born knowing. It's in their blood, passed down from dog to dog for hundreds of generations. We call it instinct, but I think it's something more. I think it's love. The first skitterer reached the cluster location and began to dig. Its long claws were perfect for the task, moving through the soil without vibration. More skitterers joined it, guided by the patient dogs, and soon a tunnel was forming, heading straight down toward the parasite breeding ground. When they reached the cluster, Yenna was ready with a focused heat emitter. A single pulse, and thousands of parasites were destroyed. The skitterers scattered back to the surface, unharmed, and Bear and Stella gently guided them to the next location. It took 3 days to clear all 17 clusters. By the end, the dogs were exhausted, their fur matted with dirt, their paws sore from the endless walking. But they never complained, never stopped. When Max found the last cluster, he lay down beside it and watched as the skitterers did their work, his tail wagging slowly despite his tiredness. The colony was saved. Within weeks, the purple grain began to grow again, reaching toward the twin suns with renewed strength. The Velthrani held a celebration, the first in months, and at the center of it all were 4 Earth dogs, wearing flower crowns made by the colony's children. We do not know how to thank you, Krell said to Maria. Your dogs have given us our lives back. Maria knelt down and scratched Max behind the ears. The big golden dog leaned into her touch, his eyes closing with pleasure. "They're not just my dogs," she said. "They're Earth's gift to the universe, and I think it's time the universe got to know them better." Word of what happened on Nexus 7 spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. A primitive Earth creature had solved a problem that the greatest scientific minds could not. The story was met with disbelief at first, then curiosity, then something that surprised everyone: demand. The first official request came from the Centauri Mining Consortium, a group of insected beings who extracted precious metals from asteroid fields. They had heard about dogs and their ability to detect underground threats. Could these animals also detect unstable rock formations? Could they warn miners before a collapse? The answer, humans discovered, was yes. Dogs had been used in Earth's mines for centuries, their sensitive noses able to detect gas leaks and structural weaknesses long before any machine could. When a team of 3 trained dogs was sent to the consortium's largest asteroid mine, they found 7 critical fault lines in the first week alone. Faults that would have killed dozens of workers if they had gone undetected. The second request came from the Harmony Collective, a species of telepathic beings who had lost the ability to feel emotions through normal means. They had heard that dogs could sense sadness, that they would come to comfort those in pain without being asked. Could this be true? A golden retriever named Sunny was sent to the collective's homeworld as an experiment. Within days, the telepaths were changed forever. Sunny could not read minds, but she did not need to. She simply knew when someone was hurting and she would go to them, rest her head in their lap, and look at them with eyes full of unconditional love. For a species that had forgotten how to cry, Sunny taught them to feel again. The third request came from the Keth, a warrior race who had been fighting a civil war for generations. They did not want dogs for comfort or detection. They wanted them for something else entirely. "We have heard that Earth dogs were once used in battle," the Keth ambassador said to the human delegation. "We wish to acquire war dogs for our conflict." The human response was immediate and firm: "No. Dogs can be trained for protection," the human ambassador explained. "They can be trained to defend the innocent, to guard those who cannot guard themselves. But we will not give you dogs to use as weapons of war. That is not what dogs are for." The Keth were angry. They threatened to break diplomatic relations with Earth. They demanded to know why humans thought they could control who received these animals. "Because they are our family," the ambassador said simply, "and we do not send our family to die in wars that are not their own." This answer confused the galactic community. Family? These were animals, were they not? Creatures bred for human use, property to be traded and sold. How could they be family? Humans tried to explain, but the explanation was difficult. Dogs were not just pets, not just tools, not just companions. They were something more, something that humans struggled to put into words. Dogs had evolved alongside humanity, changed with them, grown with them. They understood humans in ways that even other humans could not. And humans, in turn, had learned to love dogs in ways they could not love anything else. "A dog will never betray you," Maria Santos told the Galactic Council in a speech that would become famous across known space. "A dog will never lie to you, never manipulate you, never use you for their own gain. A dog's love is the purest thing in the universe. It asks for nothing but your presence, your kindness, your care. And in return, it gives you everything it has, everything it is." She paused, her voice growing thick with emotion. "On my world, we have a saying: we do not deserve dogs. It means that dogs are better than us in all the ways that matter. They are loyal when we are faithless. They are brave when we are afraid. They forgive us when we hurt them, and they love us even when we fail to love ourselves. If you want to understand humanity, understand our dogs. They are the best of us, the part of us we always hoped to be." The speech changed everything. Suddenly, every species in the galaxy wanted to understand these remarkable creatures. Scientific delegations came to Earth to study dogs, to learn about their history, their biology, their bond with humans. What they found astounded them. Dogs could detect cancer by smell, often before any medical scanner could find it. Dogs could predict seizures, sense changes in blood sugar, alert to allergens. Dogs could find missing persons, detect explosives, locate survivors in disaster zones. Dogs could guide the blind, assist the disabled, comfort the traumatized. But more than all of this, dogs could do something that no machine, no technology, no other creature in the galaxy could do. They could love unconditionally. The Velthrani were the first non-human species to establish a formal dog exchange program with Earth. Ambassador Krell himself traveled to Earth to select the first group of dogs that would live permanently on a Velthrani world. He visited a breeding facility in a place called Colorado, where the mountains touched the sky and the air was thin and clean. There, he met hundreds of dogs, each one unique, each one eager to greet him with wagging tails and wet noses. "How do I choose?" Krell asked the facility director, a kind woman named Sarah who had spent her whole life working with dogs. "You don't," Sarah said with a smile. "They choose you." Krell did not understand what she meant until a small dog with floppy ears and spotted fur walked up to him and sat at his feet. The dog looked up at him with warm brown eyes, and Krell felt that same strange warmth he had felt when Max first approached him on Nexus 7. "This one," Krell said. "What is its name?" "Her name is Penny," Sarah said. "She's a beagle. They're scent hounds originally bred to track small game. She's gentle, curious, and very food-motivated. She'll need lots of exercise and attention." Krell reached down and touched Penny's head. Her fur was soft, softer than anything he had ever felt. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing with pleasure, her tail wagging slowly. "She will come to Velthra," Krell said. "She will be the first dog on my homeworld." The journey back to Velthra took several weeks. During that time, Krell learned everything he could about caring for Penny. He learned what food she needed, how much water, when to take her outside for walks. He learned that she liked to sleep curled up against warm things, that she would bark at strange noises, that she had a particular fondness for a squeaky toy shaped like a small earth creature called a squirrel. But most importantly, Krell learned that Penny loved him. She followed him everywhere, watched him constantly, greeted him with overwhelming joy every time he entered a room. Even when he scolded her for chewing on important documents, she would lower her head, wag her tail hopefully, and look at him with eyes that begged for forgiveness. He could not stay angry at her. He found that he did not want to. When they arrived on Velthra, Penny became an instant sensation. The Velthrani had never seen anything like her. They crowded around her, their scales rippling with curiosity, their 4 eyes wide with wonder. Penny, for her part, seemed delighted by all the attention. She wagged her tail so hard her whole body wiggled, and she tried to lick every face that came near her. "She is enthusiastic," observed Elder Vosk, the leader of the Velthrani High Council. "Is this behavior normal?" "Very normal," Krell assured him. "She is expressing happiness. Dogs do this when they are pleased." "Fascinating," Vosk said. Then, hesitantly, he reached out and patted Penny on the head. Penny responded by rolling onto her back and exposing her belly. "What is she doing now?" Vosk asked, alarmed. "Is she ill?" "No," Krell said, laughing for the first time in many years. "She wants you to rub her belly. It is a sign of trust." Vosk, the most powerful Velthrani alive, got down on his knees and rubbed a dog's belly. Penny kicked her legs with pleasure, her tongue hanging out of her mouth in a silly grin. "I understand now," Vosk said quietly. "I understand why the humans love them so." Within a year, Velthra had established its own dog breeding program, working closely with Earth experts to ensure the animals were healthy and well cared for. Beagles became popular among Velthrani scientists, who valued their incredible sense of smell for research purposes. Border collies were adopted by Velthrani farmers, who discovered that the dogs could herd their own livestock just as effectively as they herded Earth animals. But the most popular breed among the Velthrani was something called a Labrador Retriever. Labs were patient, gentle, and endlessly loving. They seemed to understand that Velthrani were different from humans, that they needed different things. A lab would curl up against a Velthrani's cool scales, providing warmth without overwhelming heat. A lab would wait patiently for its Velthrani owner to process emotions, never pushing, never demanding. They adapt, Krell explained, to visiting dignitaries from other species. That is perhaps their greatest gift. Dogs adapt to those they love. They become what we need them to be. The ripple effects of the Nexus 7 incident continued to spread through the galaxy. The Harmony Collective established a network of therapy dogs, creatures specifically trained to help telepaths reconnect with their emotions. The Centauri Mining Consortium made dogs mandatory on all their operations, and workplace deaths dropped by 70%. Even the Keth, the warrior race who had demanded war dogs, eventually found a place for Earth's canine companions, not in battle, but in healing. Keth veterans who returned from the front lines, broken in body and spirit, discovered that dogs could help them in ways no medicine could. The simple act of caring for another creature, of being loved unconditionally, gave many Keth warriors a reason to keep living. "We were wrong," the Keth ambassador admitted to the human delegation. "We wanted dogs to help us kill. Instead, they have taught us how to live." Humanity found itself in a strange position. They were still considered primitive by galactic standards, their technology laughable, their understanding of physics incomplete. But they had something no other species had: dogs. And dogs, it turned out, were worth more than all the advanced technology in the universe. Trade agreements were signed. Diplomatic relations were strengthened. Species that had never spoken to humans suddenly wanted to establish embassies, not for political reasons, but because they wanted access to the dog exchange program. "It's funny," Maria Santos said in an interview broadcast across the galaxy. She was old now, retired from her captaincy, living on a small farm on Earth with Max, Luna, Bear, and Stella. All 4 dogs were getting old too, gray in their muzzles, slow in their steps. But they still greeted Maria every morning with wagging tails, still followed her around the farm, still curled up at her feet when she sat by the fire at night. "When we first made contact with alien species," Maria continued, "we thought we would impress them with our art, our music, our philosophy. We thought they would be amazed by our buildings, our machines, our weapons. But in the end, the thing that changed everything was something we didn't even think about. Just our dogs. Just these silly, loving, wonderful creatures who have been with us since the beginning." She scratched Max behind the ears, and the old dog sighed with contentment. "Maybe that says something about what really matters in the universe. Not power, not technology, not conquest. Just love. Simple, unconditional love. The kind that a dog gives freely without expecting anything in return." On Nexus 7, the colony celebrated the 5th anniversary of their salvation. The purple grain fields stretched endlessly under the twin suns, healthy and abundant. The population had doubled, then tripled. New families arrived every month, eager to build lives on the planet that had been saved by Earth dogs. Ambassador Krell returned for the celebration, bringing Penny with him. She was older now too, her muzzle gray, her steps slower. But her tail still wagged when she saw the familiar fields, still wagged when the colony's children crowded around her with treats and toys. A statue had been erected in the colony's central square. It showed 4 dogs standing proud against the wind, looking out over the fields they had saved. Max, Luna, Bear, and Stella, immortalized in bronze. Krell stood before the statue, Penny at his side, and addressed the gathered crowd. "5 years ago we were dying," he said. "Our crops were failing, our hopes were fading, and we had nowhere to turn. Then a small human ship came to our aid, carrying 4 creatures that we had never seen before, 4 Earth dogs who would change everything. He looked down at Penny, who looked back at him with warm brown eyes. I did not understand then what dogs were. I thought they were animals, tools, possessions. I was wrong. Dogs are teachers. They teach us patience, loyalty, and love. They teach us to be better than we are, to reach for the best in ourselves even when we feel lost in darkness. He reached down and touched Penny's head, feeling the soft warmth of her fur. Humanity calls dogs their best friends. I think that is not quite right. Dogs are not humanity's best friends. They are the galaxy's best friends. They are a gift that Earth has given to all of us, a light in the darkness that shows us the way home. The crowd cheered. Penny barked once, happy and bright, her tail wagging furiously. And somewhere across the vastness of space, on 1,000 different worlds, other dogs were doing what dogs have always done, loving their companions with all their hearts, asking for nothing but love in return. 10 years after the Nexus 7 incident, the Galactic Council officially recognized dogs as protected sentient companions, a new classification created specifically for them. It meant that dogs could not be bought or sold like property, could not be harmed or neglected, could not be used in any way that violated their nature or well-being. The human delegation had fought hard for this classification, and they had won. Not because humans had political power or military strength, but because every species that had ever known a dog understood why they deserved protection. Dogs cannot speak for themselves, the human ambassador said when the classification was announced. They cannot advocate for their own rights, cannot protest their own mistreatment, so we must speak for them. We must protect them as they have always protected us. This is our duty, our honor, and our privilege. The classification came with strict guidelines for the dog exchange program. Every species that wanted dogs had to prove they could care for them properly. They had to build appropriate facilities, train qualified caregivers, establish veterinary programs. They had to promise that every dog would be loved, cherished, and treated as a member of the family. Most species met these requirements gladly. A few did not, and they were denied access to dogs until they improved their standards. There were no exceptions, no negotiations, no compromises. Dogs are not a privilege, humans insisted. Dogs are a responsibility. If you cannot meet that responsibility, you do not deserve them. This attitude confused some species, who saw it as humans being unnecessarily protective of animals they had bred themselves. But those who had known dogs understood. They understood that dogs gave more than they took, loved more than they asked, cared more than they could ever express. Protecting dogs was not about ownership. It was about gratitude. 20 years after Nexus 7, Maria Santos passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was very old, surrounded by family, including the descendants of Max, Luna, Bear, and Stella. The original 4 had died years earlier, mourned across the galaxy as heroes. At Maria's funeral, representatives from 17 different species attended. The Velthrani sent a delegation led by Ambassador Krell, who brought Penny's great-granddaughter, a beagle named Hope. The Harmony Collective sent their finest therapy dogs, creatures who had helped millions heal from emotional trauma. Even the Keth sent a representative, accompanied by a large German shepherd who had helped countless warriors find peace. The funeral was held on Maria's farm, under a sky filled with stars. Dogs of every breed surrounded the gathering, their presence a comfort, their warmth a blessing. Maria Santos was an ordinary human, Krell said in his eulogy. She had no special powers, no advanced technology, no political influence. She was just a captain of a small trade ship, passing through the universe, trying to do some good along the way. He paused, looking out at the gathered species, the humans and Velthrani and Centauri and Keth and dozens of others, all united by the memory of one woman and 4 dogs. But she brought us something extraordinary. She brought us dogs, and in doing so she brought us together. She showed us that love does not require language, that friendship does not require similarity, that family does not require blood. She showed us the best of humanity, and in doing so, she brought out the best in all of us. Hope the beagle walked up to Krell and sat at his feet. She looked up at him with warm brown eyes, the same eyes that Penny had had, the same eyes that dogs had always had. "Maria is gone," Krell said, his voice thick with emotion. "But what she gave us will never die. As long as dogs live among us, as long as they love us and are loved in return, Maria Santos will be remembered. And so will the lesson she taught us, that in a universe full of wonders, the greatest wonder of all is the simple, unconditional love of a dog." The funeral ended as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The dogs remained with their owners, quiet and gentle, sensing the sadness and offering comfort without words. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, other dogs were doing the same thing, sitting with their companions, offering warmth in the cold, light in the darkness, love in the emptiness of space. That was what dogs did. That was what they had always done. And that was why every species in the galaxy wanted one, forever. The years continued to pass. Humanity spread further into the galaxy, no longer considered primitive or backward. Their technology had improved, their understanding had deepened, their place among the stars had been secured. But their greatest contribution remained unchanged: dogs. The dog exchange program grew into the largest cultural exchange in galactic history. Every year, thousands of dogs left Earth to live with alien species, and every year, the bonds between species grew stronger. Trade disputes were settled by leaders who had learned patience from their border collies. Wars were prevented by diplomats who had learned empathy from their golden retrievers. Scientific breakthroughs came from researchers who had learned persistence from their beagles. "Dogs have done more for galactic peace than any treaty or alliance," declared the Galactic Council president, a member of a species that had been humanity's bitter enemy just decades earlier. "They have taught us to trust, to forgive, to love. They have shown us that we are not so different after all." On Nexus 7, the colony had become a thriving world, home to millions of beings from dozens of species. The original settlement was now a museum, preserved exactly as it had been during the crisis. Visitors could walk through the fields where Max had found the parasite clusters, could see the pens where the burrowing skitterers had been released, could stand before the statue of 4 brave dogs who had saved an entire world. Ambassador Krell's descendants still lived on Nexus 7, and they still kept beagles. It had become a family tradition, passed down through generations, a living connection to the day when everything changed. "My ancestor was the first Velthrani to bond with a dog," young Krellville told visitors to the museum. "He always said that Penny taught him more about love than anyone else in his life. She taught him that love is not a weakness, but a strength. That caring for another creature makes you bigger, not smaller. That the capacity for love is the truest measure of any soul." She looked down at her own beagle, a descendant of Penny named Starlight, who wagged her tail at the attention. "Dogs have been with humans for 15,000 years, Krellville continued. "They have been with us for 50, but already we cannot imagine life without them. They are part of us now, part of who we are, and we are better for it." The story of Earth dogs in the galaxy did not end. It could not end because it was not a story about events but about love. And love, true love, does not have endings. It only has continuations. On every world where dogs lived, they continued to do what they had always done. They greeted their owners with joy, comforted them in sadness, protected them from harm. They asked for nothing but food, shelter, and affection, and they gave everything they had in return. They could not speak, but they communicated more clearly than any language. They could not think as other beings thought, but they understood more deeply than any philosopher. They were small, fragile creatures in a vast and dangerous universe, yet they faced every day with courage and hope and boundless enthusiasm. They were dogs, Earth dogs, the best friends the galaxy had ever known. And they were loved. Forever.